My gosh, what an eventful Pokemon World Championships weekend we had in Honolulu, Hawaii. Wow, if you haven't seen it, you gotta go watch it for yourself, because you're not gonna believe it if I were to just tell you everything that happened. From cheaters getting caught red-handed on video, to players who were caught cheating previously on stream, to being allowed to play and then get top 32 placement, to a player getting a match loss for unsportsmanlike conduct in the top 8. We now have our first ever world champion that lost in the top 8. That is crazy. I don't really think the competitive integrity to the Pokemon trading card game is being held to the highest standard. That's my opinion. We're going to talk about all that and more in an upcoming video where I talk about all the new cards and stuff like that came out of Worlds 2024. Today is all about the top 10 decks for the month of August after the World Championships. In this video, I'll be sharing with you guys what I believe to be the best deck list for these top 10 decks in the meta, along with talking about all the new inclusions that were included in these decks because of Shrouded Fable. Feel free to comment down below your top 2 decks you're going to be playing going forward, and we're going to pick one person and they're going to get 2 Morpeko V Union. We'll pick one lucky commenter to receive all 8 of these cards. And while we're talking about giveaways, we'll quickly announce the winner for these 2 Pokemon play packs. If you don't know, we did another Pokemon prize pack booster box, so congratulations to this person on screen for winning. Please get in contact with me so you can claim these packs and open them for yourself. Coming in 10th place, we have Chien-Pao EX. This deck was played by Lucas Singh, and he got 16th place at the Pokemon World Championships. Lucas has been a top player all season long, playing Chien-Pao notably as well. He was rank 1 in Canada by the end of the season, and he was rank 3 in North America overall. So congrats to Lucas on his amazing 16th place run at Worlds. I'm sure I'll see him at a local tournament here in Toronto. We have a 1-1 Palkia V and VSTAR line. This is not something we're used to seeing at all, and that is really solid in case you aren't able to set up your Baxcaliburs, or if you just need a big beefy attacker as well. Lucas did opt to run the Iron Hands EX with 1 Lightning Energy in here, 2 60 HP Frigibax, and 1 70 HP Frigibax with the heavier 2 retreat cost. And on top of that, the big new inclusion that's really notable in this list is the Pheasantipede EX. Having this Pokemon be a Pokemon you can just throw your energies on and do a big 100 damage snipe is really nice. But more importantly, it has the extra draw power that you get if you do have a Pokemon knocked out on the previous turn. Sometimes Babero isn't enough to get you there, and that extra 3 off of Pheasantipede can be all that it takes to get you to that win at the end of the game. Another notable inclusion to this list is the item card Night Stretcher from Shrouded Fable, which allows you to bring back from your discard pile either a basic energy or a Pokemon. So you can always choose the Lightning Energy or just an extra energy if you do need that extra damage or extra energy on board, or you can grab the missing piece, whether it be like a Baxcalibur that you lost from Pokestop, or a Palkia, or anything honestly, or even the Iron Bundle, which is a really useful tech card to gust up a single prizer, which your Iron Hands can clean up for 2 prizes. It's safe to say that Lucas has definitely left a legacy, with Chien-Pao probably being one of the top earners with this archetype. Take a look at this amazing list of accolades he racked up during the 2024 season. It's insane. Funnily enough, he didn't win the regional with Chien-Pao that he did. He ended up winning with like a Charizard hybrid deck. So if you're a Chien-Pao believer, the deck is still alive and well. So take this list and hopefully your Pokestops don't mill all of your Iridas. Number 9 is a sort of rogue deck pick that actually popped off as well, getting a couple or 3 big day 2 placements, and 2 of them from brothers. Our number 9 deck is Gholdengo EX with Palkia VSTAR. The 2 most notable placements with this deck were played by the Kawasaki brothers, Kobe Kawasaki and Cameron Kawasaki. Kobe I actually played against in the Vancouver regionals in my win-in for day 2, and he beat me with the Zoroark stage 1 deck. Cool to see 2 brothers pilot Gholdengo EX to great success, Cameron getting 39th and Kobe getting 50th, and this is our only stage 1 EX Pokemon deck list in the top 10. So if you're a fan of Gholdengo, the stonks are high, it's time to invest. Just like the Chien-Pao list that had the 1-1 Palkia line, we also have a 1-1 Palkia V and VSTAR here as well, which is a potential attacker, but also it allows you to pull off Moonlight Shuriken with Radiant Greninja, the perfect Pokemon to help be a draw engine in this deck, other than of course Gholdengo allowing you to draw a whole bunch of cards itself. Now this does look like a pretty straightforward Gholdengo EX list, but some notable inclusions to the deck include Pheasantipede EX, of course, being that extra draw power is really useful. Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking is an MVP supporter in this deck, because getting to draw what you want exactly when you want it. With the help of Gholdengo is super useful, or just Greninja in general. 3 copies of Night Stretcher in here. Say you mail something, no big deal. Night Stretcher will just bring it right back. The A-Spec of choice here is going to be the Hyper Aroma. Hyper Aroma is amazing. It allows you to basically bring in 3 Gholdengos from your deck into your hand, and you just get to get set up like crazy. So if you're able to get some early pop-ins early on, the Hyper Aroma is so useful for some insanely strong consistency for this deck. And then last but not least, you got 2 copies of Pokemon Catcher for some coin flipping fun. We're not rocking the Prime Catcher in this deck because they wanted to go for some more consistency with Hyper Aroma, and sometimes all you need is 1 well-timed heads to swing a matchup heavily into your favor. Coming in at number 8 is a deck that dominated a lot of 2024, and we have the highest placement for Charizard EX, and no other than Tord Reklev is the pilot for this particular deck, aka the GOAT of modern Pokemon. And I believe Tord Reklev was just 1 match point shy of getting into that asymmetrical top cut. So he was super close to getting into that top 8, and he got 2nd place at Worlds last year. So it's no surprise for him, you know, there's no surprise to see him do so well at any major event. You just expect to see Tord essentially in like the top 16 at almost every major that he plays in. This version of Charizard is very spicy. So we've seen Tord in the past kind of dabble with the Dragon Bolt EX line in the deck. However, this time he went for more of a consistent straight Charizard list with some defensive preparations in mind. Tord didn't choose Prime Catcher as his A-Spec. Tord didn't choose Hero's Cape as his A-Spec. He chose Unfair Stamp, and Unfair Stamp makes just a lot of sense. Unfair Stamp is an A-Spec that when played can just brick your opponent, and you can kind of run away with it after your opponent takes a knockout on your Pokemon. And the fact that you have cards like Arven and Pidgeot and Force Seal Stone to search out this A-Spec whenever you want just makes it that more of a defensive powerhouse. I want to say we have kind of a greedy line for the Charizard. We have a 2-1-2 line, and we have the Charmeleon in here that is protective. What's the right word? It's defensive against Devo TM. Tord's of course rocking the 2-1-2 Pidgeot line that he's kind of made famous, along with the Barrel line at 1-1. And most notably, he has the Rapska and Rellor in here. I actually have the Rapska and Rellor right here. For those that don't know what Rapska does, because it's not a super popular card or inclusion in many decks, it's a stage 1 that has the ability Spherical Shield, which has prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to your bench Pokemon. So it allows you to stay safe from those Greninjas, those Curiums, those Dragon Bolt EX attacks, anything that does any kind of spreading whatsoever. The Rapska is there to defend yourself. And it's definitely useful because Tord does have some low HP Pokemon in here, of course, like the Charmander and the Pidgey, but also the Cleffa and the Squovet. Tord also opted to include the new Shrouded Fables Pheasantipity EX in here as well. It seems like this is just one of those cards that's gonna make its way into every deck. Pheasantipity EX is just the MVP of Shrouded Fable. Tord went for the Radiant Charizard for this particular list, which makes a lot of sense, being able to just swing at those big EX Pokemon like Raging Bolt for knockout, or any of those other big Pokemon like Teal Mask, and the list goes on. Miraidon, Iron Hands, Chien-Pao. Just having that nice 1 prize trade option is really useful. Of course, you just have the drawback of it not being able to be easily retreatable, but he also has Professor Turo's Scenario in here for that if he needs to, you know, wipe a 2-prizer off the board, or if he needs to retreat with it. And then he also has a Thornton in here as well, so you can Thornton into whatever you need to, and that's just kind of insane. Like, I love the fact that there's a one-off Thornton in here, because you can set up the Rapska that way, you can set up your Pidgeot easier, your Charizard easier, you can turn your Lumineon from being a liability into a completely different Pokemon, and you can just, boom, surprise him with another Radiant Charizard on the field. Something that's extra spicy with Tord's list is that he does play 1 copy of Double Turbo Energy, so that can work really well with Radiant Charizard, it can work well with Pidgeot, and it can also work well with Pheasantipity. I probably don't need to explain the game plan for Charizard EX to you guys by now, but you set up your Charizard, you keep swinging, and you have Pidgeot EX to help get you there, being able to quick search once per turn to get the exact card you need. Coming in at 8, we have Roaring Moon EX Turbo. Yes, I love to see Roaring Moon EX make it into the top 8 of their top 10 of this list. But not only that, it got 2nd place at the World Championships, and I was cheering, how do I pronounce Shinosuke Shiokawa. I was cheering for Shinosuke so much. And I'm also a huge fan of Roaring Moon. Like, you guys know how much I play Roaring Moon outside, running around locals with it. I post the deck profiles of Roaring Moon pretty often. So I'm a huge fan of this Roaring Moon list. It's amazing. It's fast, it's turbo, it's go, go, go. It's full speed ahead, not letting up on the gas. We got 4 copies of Roaring Moon. You got the 2 Pecharunt EXs in here, which is an amazing late game attacker when you need it to attack late game, but it also gives you an auto win against control, which is really a really annoying matchup for Roaring Moon before Pecharunt came out. So this allows you to not need to have switch cards in your deck. Your Pecharunt's ability is the switch card. They went for 2 Squawk abilities because getting that turn 1 Squawk and Seize is insanely important to get that turn 2 Donk. This deck is absolutely terrifying to play against if you're going first, or if you're going first into it. If they win the coin toss and they choose second, there's a good chance they're gonna probably cook whatever's in your active spot. With it being a dark deck, it only makes sense that it also has a Pheasantipity EX in here as well. But even if Pheasantipity wasn't a dark type Pokemon, I'm sure you squeeze this Pokemon into the list as well. And this deck is just as consistent as it can be. If you look at the card counts for this deck, there's a lot of 4 of. So you got 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Nest Ball, 4 Trekking Shoes, 4 Earthen Vessel, 4 Dark Patch, and of course, most notably, we got 4 Pokemon catchers. So this deck, you're drawing a lot of cards, you're turboing through your deck. So if you're able to just coin flip your way into attacking exactly what you want, it is a nice kind of a nice little item to have in your deck. 2 Pokegears in here as well, because you're low on the supporter count. We got 4 Sadas and 2 Judges with 1 Boss's Orders. So we got the Pop Hat in here just in case you need to throw more Sadas, more Judges, or that 1 boss back into your deck. But there are times when you do Pokestop a pretty important supporter away, so being able to Pop Hat them back in and also use the Pokegear item to just basically select that supporter and add it to your hand is really aggressive and very useful. It's not very cutesy, it's not very demure. And of course, while you look at that, there's also 1 copy of Night Stretcher in there as well. If you want a very fast turbo Hunga Bunga deck that just goes boom boom boom, swing swing, knockout swing, gust swing, pick up this deck. It doesn't require too much brain power to play. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have been playing Roaring Moon recently, but I've been playing with like the water package with 3 waters, a couple of energy switches in there, 4 to be exact. And that was like one of the top lists from Japan National. So it's cool to see how this deck has evolved in the Shrouded Fable format, going for the more, you could say, Ross Cawthon approach, more linear, more turbo, more straightforward, more consistent version. So I'm happy to see this list do so well. Getting 2nd place at the World Championships is amazing to see. And also, Roaring Moon is just not a deck that was on a lot of people's radar. So it's really cool to see like this rogue deck do so well. Anyways, on to another deck that was on a lot of people's radar, and a lot of people were scared to play it because of the insanely high tie rate that it has. Our number 6 list, or number 6 deck in the top 10 is Gardevoir EX. Gardevoir EX is a deck that's always been very popular amongst the top players. However, as some of you guys know, they did this change in the way that basically ties feel and ties play in the point structure for Worlds. And basically, if you tie at Worlds, it's basically a loss. And so that definitely scared a lot of players away from playing Gardevoir, but not all of them. Now, NEIC was flooded with Gardevoir. I think there were 6 out of 8 top placements in the top 8 were Gardevoir, and then we had the 2 Lost Zone boxes, and one of the Lost Zones won. This list you're looking at here was played by Luo Tenqing, I probably pronounced that horribly wrong, from China, and they got 13th place at Worlds with this highest placing list. Gardevoir was one of the most popular decks going into day 1 of Worlds. There was 110 people playing it. However, only 8% of those people converted into day 2, with 9 players making it into day 2. And a lot of the big names that we're used to seeing play Gardevoir for a lot of majors, they weren't playing Gardevoir for this World Championships. Gardevoir doesn't really gain anything from Shrouded Fable. We already had the Monkey Dory from the previous set, and so that was like the big card that was allowing Gardevoir to do so well. Being able to hit that nice little 220 number with Gardevoir EX with the help of Monkey Dory was super useful. We have all the typical attackers in this deck for Gardevoir. We got Cresselia, we got Drifloon, we got Screamtail. We also have Fluttermane in here and Klefki to try and slow down your opponent's early game. And you also, look at that, you got 1 copy of Night Stretcher in here as well. Unfair Stamp is the go-to ace spec for Gardevoir at this time. I know some players are Hyper Aroma believers, but honestly, unfair stamp is insane. Now, of course, with a lot of decks running Pheasantipity EX, it did allow some decks to kind of just get their way or unbrick themselves out of the unfair stamp. This particular Gardevoir player chose to have a enhanced hammer in here along with 2 copies of Artisan. Now, some Gardevoir players do play Temple of Sinnoh to turn off special energies like Legacy Energy or a double turbo energy, but by having the enhanced hammer in here, an easily searchable card, especially with Arven, that's their way to counter those special energies instead. Having Artisan just allows you to have more consistent setup, because Gardevoir, all you really need to do is set up, get those curlier refinements on the board, and just refine your deck until it's only amazing cards that you want to really use every single turn. On to number 5. Our number 5 deck is Lugia VSTAR with Archeops. Lugia VSTAR was insanely popular last Worlds, and this year it's no different, because we have some amazing new cards that upgrade Lugia in the Shrouded format, or just, you know, this format in general, the last couple of months. Now, the Lugia list you guys are looking at was played by Rahul Reddy, one of the top players in the game, and Rahul's also a fellow content creator as well, so I'll leave his channel linked down below. Rahul Reddy made it all the way to the top 8 asymmetrical cut with his Lugia deck, unfortunately losing to Michael Davidson, who is playing Regidrago VSTAR. Fun fact, I actually played against Michael Davidson in one of the rounds in Pittsburgh, and I beat him 2-0 with Miraidon, and we didn't have Iron Hands back then. He was playing Gardevoir. But yeah, you guys know all about Lugia by now. You gotta set up those Archeops in the discard, get that summoning star off, and then your fleet of attackers can just start swinging at your opponent turn after turn. You got amazing attackers in here like Cincino, so you can hit some big numbers with a single prize attacker, or a no prize attacker if you put on that Legacy energy. You got Iron Hands in here as well, so you can take some extra prizes with Amp you very much. Blood Moon Ursaluna is also an auto inclusion for this deck, and they also have Weird Year V in here too, which is a little spicy. Rahul, just like a lot of the other decks in this top 10 list, has Pheasantipity EX in his deck list as well, which is also a potential attacker, but of course mainly used for its draw power. And I want to say the biggest, spiciest inclusion to his list is the Raikou V. Raikou V was not a card I expected to see in this Lugia list, and so when I saw him play it on stream and just seeing it was so cool. I was like, hey, let's go Raikou V. Raikou V is one of the MVPs in Miraidon, so to see it do so well in a Lugia list is also really cool to see. This looks to be a very straightforward and, you know, consistent version of Lugia, and it had to be to get all the way to top 9, because Lugia is also known for its inconsistencies at times, being a coin flippy deck with Mesagosa, with Capturing Aromas, which he does have copies of in his deck. He has 2 Mesagosas and 4 Capturing Aromas. He piloted it all the way to top 9 or 9th place. Coming in 4th place in our top 10 is the deck that also got 3rd place at the World Championships. I was cheering for Jesse Parker so much, man. I was so happy to see Jesse get in the top 4, and I was excited to see that he'd be playing against Ian Robb on his Regidrago, and then the whole scandal went down with Ian's unsportsmanlike conduct on stream, forcing Jesse to play against Fernando Cifuentes on his Iron Hands deck. Jesse did beat Fernando earlier in the Swiss rounds 2-0, so he was, you know, not feeling completely unconfident going into the top 4 with the changed deck, the changed opponent that was Fernando. But unfortunately, he hit some very unfortunate prizing in one of the games, where I believe there was like 3 electric generators prized, and that was just brutal to see. Ugh. But yeah, here's your best looking Miraidon deck that you can play right now. Again, huge congrats to Jesse Parker for getting 3rd place at the Pokemon World Championships. He was undefeated, 13-0 I believe, undefeated going into top 4. So what a incredible run he had. And Jesse went for a very, I want to say, standard, traditional, consistent Miraidon list that we've seen time and time again over the last couple of weeks or so. 2 Miraidon, 2 Iron Hands, and most notably 2 Squawkabilly. Just like how our Roaring Moon player, Shinosuke, he had 2 Squawkabilly. Jesse also felt that getting that turn 1 Squawk was super critical, so they also opted for 2 Squawkabillies in here too. 1 Raikou V in here, of course, and there's no Raichu in here, but we do have that 1 Blood Moon Ursaluna for that big 240 swing damage at the end of the game, and also it's a massive tank of a Pokemon at 260 HP. Lumineon V in here for some consistency, because we are running 4 copies of Ultra Ball. We got a Pheasantipity in here too, and we got Zapdos as a single prize attacking option Also to help damage boost your Pokemon like Miraidon to get those 230 numbers when you need to. Jesse also chose to have Radiant Greninja in here as well for some extra draw power, which makes a lot of sense because you are rocking 16 lightning energies in here with 2 copies of double turbo energy. You gotta have Iron Bundle in here as well so you can gust around your opponent and hopefully bring in a 1-prize Pokemon that your Iron Hands can clean up, or just, you know, attack something that is going to get knocked out because sometimes your opponent has a big beefy Pokemon you can't swing into. Since you don't have Raichu V in here, that big one-shot damage is just not there. So having Iron Bundle is really good, whether you're going to take a 2-prize knockout with like a Miraidon Photon Blaster, or a 2-prize knockout with Raikou or Blood Moon or Saluna, or you know, swing in with Iron Hands. This version of Miraidon does not have a ton of copies of Research, which I honestly am a fan of. I like the Arven builds. I've been playing heavy Arven builds myself, if you guys have been seeing my deck list evolve over the last couple of months. The A-Spec of choice, of course, here is Prime Catcher, because you really just want to be able to Arven for it, or Seal Stone and for it, and Gust in to attack whatever you want. I personally have been playing 2 copies of Seal Stone myself in my Miraidon list, so it's really validating to see Jesse also rock 2 copies of Force Seal Stone. You of course can throw it onto your Lumineon, but ideally it's going to go onto your Raikou V because it is so easily searchable with Miraidon. We got 1 Bravery Charm, 1 Escape Board, and Town Store in here as well for some extra consistency. You love that Town Store just to be able to grab that Seal Stone pretty much, because you have 2. You're pretty much going to be guaranteed to have it in your deck. It's pretty unlikely you're going to have both prize. And yeah, I could just blab on and on and on about Miraidon. I love Miraidon, so congrats again to Jesse on 3rd place at the World Championships with Miraidon, our Miraidon King for the 2024 season. Although, you know, we got JW Krewall, who also took Toronto down, but 3rd at Worlds is honestly, I think 3rd at Worlds is... It's even bigger than a regional win. Coming in at number 3 is the World Championship deck. We got Iron Thorns EX, Quad Thorns, played by Fernando Cifuentes. Iron Thorns is a deck I actually covered on the channel. I believe it's like my 3rd most recent video. I'm a big Iron Thorns believer, so it's cool. It's kind of cool. It's kind of validating to also see, you know, a deck, when I don't cover too many decks, a deck that I did specifically cover also pop off and win the World Championships. Now, I know there's quite a discussion to be had about this World Championships, and we're not going to talk about it too much in this deck, in this top 10 deck video, but people would consider that Fernando won with Iron Thorns with an asterisk. There's always going to be an asterisk there because he's, again, the first World Championship winner to lose in top 8. A lot of people respected Iron Thorns as a deck going into Worlds. People knew about it. This was no surprise rogue pick. There was a decent amount of people playing it. It was the 6th most played deck going into day 1 at 63 players, and then it had 10 going into day 2 with a high 15.87 or 16% conversion rate. The big thing that was detracting people from playing this deck was just the coin flippiness and the lack of skill expression in the deck. And from what I heard, Fernando actually chose his World Championship winning deck on Wednesday. He locked it in on Wednesday. Just, I believe, like, what? A day or 2 before the World Championships. It's a very coin flippy deck in a sense because we have cards like Crushing Hammer in here as well. But it also just is either like really strong into some matchups or kind of mid into others. And so if you just hit the right matchups, essentially the coin flip is into the matchups, you're going to be able to have a really strong run. And so yeah, if there's lots of Lugias out there, if there's lots of Gardevoirs out there, there's Charizards out there, Raging Bolts out there, this is a deck that, you know, has a pretty fun time into a lot of matchups. Just turning off abilities is very strong. Path of the Peak, but as an ability on a rule box Pokemon, is pretty freaking good. One of the big strengths that this deck really has is how linear it is and how easy it is to play and just set up in general. The new inclusion of Chorus's Tenacity from Shrouded Fable is huge. Being able to guarantee you get that energy attachment that you need, because you only need 2 energy attachments to start attacking with this deck, 1 lightning and a double turbo. Chorus's Tenacity is really strong. You also got Lost City in here as well to just bump your opponent's stadium. Whatever they're playing, bump it, and then if you're knocking it out, send it to the Shadow Realm. Very useful, very demure. You have an insanely heavy supporter lineup in here. We got 4 Arven, 3 Research, 3 Judge. Judge is probably one of the best cards in this deck because just like how you'd be able to Path of the Peak and then Judge back then, you just have to Judge now, and you got Path of the Peak built into your Iron Thorns EX. You also got Iono in here for some extra disruption. Penny in here too for a defensive play to completely deny a full turn of damage from your opponent is huge. And then sometimes if you need to, you got Giovanni's Charisma in here to get that extra attachment on so you can attack turn 1 going second. You could attach your DTE, play Giovanni's Charisma, and then boom, you're swinging 120, and you just got to do your thing, you know? If your opponent only set up one Pokemon, you're really cooking. 4 copies of Pokemon Catcher in here as well, so you're really having a strong chance of attacking whatever you want every single turn. You can just Arvin Search for it or just draw it off of a Research or a Judge. This again is a low damage dealing deck. It's all about the disruption. It's all about those hammers hitting, stalling out your opponent with catchers, and just denying their abilities. There's rule box abilities. A lot of decks really rely on rule box abilities, and so having Iron Thorns and only Iron Thorns be there is so useful. Your opponent can't gust around it. They have to have a Cancel and Cologne if they ever want to use their Roblox abilities in their deck. This deck also has the Technical Machine Turbo Energize, which is also very useful if you are going for the turn 1 Arvin, because it does mean you get to set up your second Thorns on the bench with energies loading it up, because your turn 2 you're usually not attacking, and so being able to attack with that Technical Machine is just really useful, especially since you have 4 copies of Arvin, 4 Pokegears. The chances you're doing a turn 1 Arvin are pretty high, but there's a good chance you're also going to turn 1 Judge as well. This is the deck I know a lot of people are not happy to see win the World Championships, especially with the way that it did all go down. I'd say it definitely kind of delegitimizes the deck from being so good, because it did lose in top 8, but I still have to respect it. It had an insanely high conversion rate, and again, it did make its way all the way to top 8. Like, Fernando did earn his top 8 spot, and no hate to Fernando. A lot of people are sending hate to Fernando, and I don't see it. It's not his fault. He was just given the cards he was dealt. He was just doing his thing. The ruling that was made was based off TPCI. On to number 2. Number 2 is arguably the best turbo deck out there at the moment. This deck had a lot of hype going into Worlds. A lot of people were like, if I'm going to play a turbo deck, it's going to be this deck. And we're talking about Raging Bolt EX with Teal Mask Ogerpon. Raging Bolt was the 5th most played deck at the World Championships, getting 107 players playing it in day 1, and its conversion rate into day 2 was 14%, also quite high, with 15 players making it into day 2 with Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt is another one of those turbo style decks where you got those Pokestops in there, you hope to hit some cards, you hope to not hit some others, you just go through your deck with Squawkabilly, with Teal Mask Ogerpon, with the help of Sada's Vitality in here too. And of course, you got that new extra inclusion of Pheasantipity EX in here as well. The list you're looking at here got 6th place at the World Championships, played by James Goreng from the UK. The only real big inclusion from Shrouded Fable that this deck did get was the Pheasantipity EX. This version that James played looks to be insanely turbo and a little more luck-based, because we of course do have the 3 copies of Pokemon Catcher in here, 3 copies of Pokegear in here, and 4 Trekking Shoes. We also got the Bravery Charms in here as well to make your Raging Bolts even more tanky, basically making them a V-Star Pokemon at 290 HP, which is a lot to deal with. This deck can just consistently hit 210 or 280 damage on its first turn of attacking so consistently well, like it's pretty much guaranteed. It's scary. So if you want to be that scary force at your locals, pick up Raging Bolt. On to our number 1 best deck in format for the month of August. We got Regidrago VSTAR. This is a deck that got 4 out of the top 8 placements for the World Championships this past weekend. It was the deck that everybody knew was the certified best deck in format going into the World Championships. If you went to this tournament, you either were playing this deck or you knew your game plan against it, because it was so popular. Let's talk about the numbers real quick. Day 1, Regidrago had 277 players playing it. That is a roughly 25% meta share. That is insane. That is what I was expecting. I was expecting 20+%. Some players were expecting 10 or 15, but I was like, no, this deck is so good. It is so dominant, there's no way it's going to be less than 20, and sure enough it was. So it had 277 players playing it day 1, it had a 12% conversion rate, or 12.64 conversion rate, making it also the most played deck into day 2 with 35 players, double the second highest amount, which was Lugia at 17. This deck is the best way to play Dragapult EX, because you're not having to set up those small little dudes. Drippies, you don't have to get those Dracloaks out either, you just get to set up your Regidrago, which is way easier to do, evolve into it, use your Teal Mask Ogerpon's energy acceleration with those grass energies, use those energy switches to throw those energies onto the Regidrago, attach for turn, and you just start using your amazing dragon attackers from your discard pile every single turn. Whether it's going to be Kyurem, which is a huge reason why Lost Box was pretty much non-existent at this tournament, because Kyurem is a bench snipe or just basically a board wipe. 3 Pokemon for 110 damage is insane. Lugia VSTAR in here as well for that rolling iron attack for defensive plays if you want your Regidrago VSTAR to be a little more tankier. You got Giratina VSTAR in here for that one-shot action for Lost Impact for 280. Oh yeah, I should also mention that we're looking at Raz Volp's deck. He got 4th place at the World Championships. Isaiah Bradner also got 5th, so here's a look at Isaiah Bradner's list, and then we're going to switch back to Raz's list since he got top 4. But yeah, Dragapult EX is so critical for this deck that you run 2 copies in it, so you have a really strong chance of getting it into your discard pile. Dragapult EX's attack is just so good and so oppressive. It denies particular decks from basically being played at all, because you're going to do 200 damage to the active, but then 60 damage spread to their bench. And so this allows you to just set up big chain of knockouts after knockouts after knockouts, or big board wipes all in one go. Dragapult EX's attack is so good. So if you want to play Dragapult EX, don't play a Dragapult EX deck, just play Regidrago VSTAR with 2 copies of Dragapult in there. And this deck is just one of those like decks that can do it all. It's kind of like a turbo style deck that is just it just gets to do what it's want. It's basically it's kind of like a Mew VMAX in a sense. You're cloning your Genesect attacks, you're cloning your Pokemon from your discard pile's attacks, and then you're just turboing through your deck with the help of all of the research copies that you're playing, with the Ionos that you're playing, with the Squawk ability that you have in here, with the Teal Mask Ogre Pawns, and of course you got Regidrago's VSTAR, which is insane. It's basically your research, and then you get to go through your entire discard pile and take 2 cards out of it and add them to your hand. Regidrago VSTAR is your undisputed best deck in format. If you want to hang out some more, I'll have some regional vlogs pop up on screen, and I'll be releasing my North American International Championships vlog very soon, probably tomorrow. So subscribe for that video, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.